So it is Monday night, and an enormous sort of unboxing. 3 days in the Finger Lakes of New York, specifically by Seneca Lake, East Seneca Lake. So visited a lot of the wineries around there and bought a ridiculous amount of wine. My goal, one of my goals was, well, to taste great wine, to do some library vintage type tastings. Older the wine, the better, especially the whites. I've been saying it over and over, the aged whites is like in my top 3 categories of wine, if not top 2. I just crave that developed taste of white wine. And I did taste a few that way. A highlight was that Silver Thread. Their 2011 Riesling was top 5 wine I had the last 3 days. Outstanding. They didn't sell the 11. I convinced them to sell a 12, it looks like, which I didn't remember getting. Oh yes, a 12. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. In doing these tastings and these visits, there was just, you need to separate, you need to add some time, especially if you're doing a specific tasting. Some of the tastings we did were unbelievably amazing, and specifically catering to what we were looking for. And then once the person that was doing the tasting for us figured it out, we would get more tasting, other bottles that weren't even part of that tasting, just to try some other things as they kind of figured out what we were into. So 8 wineries, 2 first day, 3 and 3. I think it was the perfect amount. I think you could have maybe fit 1 more, 2 more in there, but it probably would have been too much. Plus, just the sheer volume of wine that was brought back is pretty ridiculous. But really a lot of Riesling here this time around. Tried some amazing reds. I think something else to mention about what was discovered is the 2020 vintage out of the Finger Lakes is amazing. If you go up to the Finger Lakes and you see 2020 vintage, the reds and the whites are, it was a very ripe vintage. It was a very drought heavy vintage. The weather at harvest was near perfect. It was a great vintage. A lot of the places had already sold out of it. I didn't really pick up on this 2020 thing until maybe a few wineries in, and once I did, I started making sure, okay, hey, do you have any 2020? Do you have any 2020? Tasting the 2020s, buying the 2020s. So that became sort of a steady theme. I think you're going to see, if it's not old, I tried to buy 2020 for current or newer vintage, younger vintage. So should I go in order of the... Sure. So Standing Stone was the first. Standing Stone is the sister winery to Herman J. Weimer's winery, one of the more prestigious wineries down in, or up in the Finger Lakes. And I think I just see 4 wines from there. So this is, they had one, this was the oldest Riesling they had. 2016, Standing Stone Vineyard, Riesling. Didn't taste it, just bought it. 2016, got some years on it. I felt like after tasting numerous Rieslings this weekend that 2011, 2012, 2011, so that means over a decade of aging is when Riesling gets to that developed stage. Or, yeah, developed stage. This is in that developing, I feel like. The arc that it's changing, becoming perpetual, but not quite at that developed white aged character that I'm looking for. So I'm making this video way too long because I have so much wine to go through. But Standing Stone's 2016 Riesling. Then, because, like I said, 2020, Standing Stone had a number of Rieslings, and this was their timeline dry, and it was awesome. I thought the best one we had tasted, so we bought 3. They were in the 20s. I said, you know, this wine is tremendous. I didn't want to be buying duplicates and triplicates of anything that early in the visit, but I felt like this wine, why not? Great wine. There's no way this doesn't get drank. Or you could save this, but just was drinking beautifully now. So a little less acidic, but more body in the Riesling is the best way I could explain these 2020s. But a really, really great, creamy, almost creamy, creamier than you expect Riesling to be, but still retaining that acidity and doing all things that Riesling does really well, which is also aged extremely well. So there's Standing Stone. After Standing Stone was... I'm looking and failing at this right this moment. Oh, Shalestone. So Shalestone is a winery that only produces red. And I'm holding up the Pinot Noir, 2020 Pinot Noir. And we didn't get to taste this, but I just suspect that all the red wines were really good. Across their tasting, as far as the most consistent reds from one producer, one winery there, this was Shalestone from this visit. Now they only do reds, so they're doing it really, really well. This Pinot, excited to try it when we get to it. It's 2020. This is the Harmony. I think this is also a 2020. This is a blend of Merlot, Cab Franc, Cab Sauv. And I don't see a vintage. I think these were all 20s technically, but either way, this was a very nice blend called Harmony. Their Syrah was unctuous, unbelievable, did not have the black pepper. This is actually a 19 Syrah. I don't know if that's what we tasted. Again, I wasn't quite aware of this 2020 thing, but this Syrah was excellent. So I'm hoping that's the same one we tasted. Synergy 2018. So this has a few years on it. This is Syrah, Cab Sauv, Merlot blend, about 30-ish of each. And this was a really great red blend. So really, really great red wine producer. And then finally, and this was drank last night, which is why it's got the little necktie, the Cab Franc 2020. This was nothing short of amazing. Easily one of the most concentrated Cab Francs I've ever had in my life. It lacked any of those vegetal components. It had a lot of bright cherry. That was another common theme of red wines in the Finger Lakes this time around, was there's this bright red cherry, ripe red cherry aroma, like a Luxardo cherry, not the cheap maraschino sweetened cherries, but the Luxardo, if you've ever had one of those, a deeper, darker maraschino-ish, but still just a deeper, darker, meatier tasting cherry. But that's kind of what they all had on the aroma especially. So that was Shalestone. 5 from there, 4, so we're at 9. Day 2 started at Damiani. Damiani was a tremendous tasting, really well put together for us, and we tried numerous wines. What we ended up buying, so we'll just start with the Sparkler. I think it's the only, or it was one of the Sparkler, but this is a made in the Champagne style. This is a Brut 2010, so this has already tons of age on it. If you closed your eyes, went this next to a Champagne, didn't know what was it, you would have thought this was just a Champagne out of France. It was that good. It cost a bit, but it's well worth it. Really great, really crisp. Has that brioche and yeasty thing to it. Really good, really good. So the Sparkler. We then, I think, tasted some of these, but not all of them. We tasted this 2011 Pinot Noir Reserve. It was fantastic. I think this decanted for an hour will be even better. Slightly lighter style than a lot of the Pinots that are coming out lately. They're a little bit riper, but this had elegance and was really great. It'll be amazing with food or just on its own. It was really quite well made and shown great after even that many years. All right, this was the highlight. I'll do that last. And then I'm just going to rip through. Well, here's 2015 Meritage. Meritage typically just means the Bordeaux varietals. I don't remember the blend here. I'm sure it's on the back. I probably can't read it. And I can't. Maybe I can. It is 46 Cab, 38 Merlot, 16 Cab Franc. So a nice blend. It's 15. This could definitely age a little more, but a lot of guts to this wine. Again, a really well-made red again from Damiani. I think specifically they said that they're more well known for their reds, but their whites were just as impressive. So we tried The 2017, they called it semi-dry. It's still rather dry. It has a touch of residual sugar, a touch of RS. A lot of these wines, another thing you'll notice, a lot of lower ABVs. 10, 11, 12, nothing above 13 that I really saw. Really well-mannered, drinkable, but elegant wines. This is the 2017 semi-dry Riesling. We also got their 2017 regular dry Riesling, so two of their library aged ones. And then they dug deep and they had a 2011 semi-dry. So as these Rieslings age, that residual sugar even becomes less to the point where you couldn't even detect it. You could barely detect it on the 2017. It almost had just enough residual sugar to take a little off the acid, where the other one was more of an acid bomb. This had a little bit more, the semi-dry had more of a rounded taste, but by a touch, so slight. So even though it says semi-dry, these aren't sweet by any stretch. They're definitely more on the dry side. And then they had 2013. So I didn't try either the 11 or the 13, but said, we're here. If you have these, for what we tasted on the 17s, 6 years and 4 years respectively older, absolutely wanted to try those. So there is, how many from Damiani? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then the highlight of red. This was the best red we had tried. 2010 Cab Sauvignon from Damiani. In a million years, I never thought I would say that the best red I had on a trip to the Finger Lakes was a Cabernet Sauvignon. Definitely not your Napa style, but it had almost a Bordeaux-esque style mixed with a little bit of what you would call like a lighter, fruitier Sonoma style, maybe, if I had to kind of come up with a hybrid of this. But this was really well regarded when it came out and got some good accolades, put Damiani a little bit on the map, I think probably in 2010 or whenever this was released, maybe 2 years later. But this was very expensive, but a truly amazing red. So that accounts for the 8th bottle from Damiani. Damiani is where we purchased the most from, it looks like. Yes. So what did I say? That's 9 and 8. We're at 15. So that was Damiani in the morning. Next stop was Forge. Forge Cellars is a newer winery, and they forged a partnership with somebody that works for Weinbau, and his first name's Louis, I don't know his last name, but he is associated with the famous Gigondas Saint Cosme. Chateau Saint Cosme from Gigondas, and we did buy a bottle of the 2019 Le Clos to just have. You had to open it there, finish it wherever you wanted, but you had to open it there. They're not a retail shop. These wines are extremely difficult to get. These are single vineyard Gigondas. This was what put Gigondas sort of on the map. Gigondas used to be just a Grenache Syrah Mourvedre blend out of the Southern Rhone. You could add other varietals, but that's typically what they are. And Gigondas was like a bargain region comparative to Châteauneuf-du-Pape, but those are on another level, and the best Southern Rhone wine I'd ever had to date was that. Super young, I think should have been aged longer, but it was awesome to enjoy it. Sort of a once-in-a-lifetime probably for me, for both of us, and we'll see if I ever get to taste something like that again, but certainly expensive, but really, really good. Just an intense wine with a long way to go if you bought it and aged it. So anyway, from Forge, we bought a bunch of Rieslings. They are doing the single vineyard thing, and they have tons of them, tons of single vineyard Rieslings. We tasted, I think, 3 or 4. Well, 3 were single vineyards. One is what they call their Classique, which is just a blend of all the vineyards. I specifically was interested in their single vineyard one, so we tasted this one later, the Wagner Kaywood East 2020, so another 2020 Riesling. This one was great. Then this one we did taste also, the Railroad 2020, single vineyard Riesling. And then we bought, but didn't try, 2 of the Peach Orchard on just a whim. And we bought these because at Damiani we were told that there's a Davis Vineyard, which is where this 2017, if I'm not mistaken, dry Riesling. Let me see if it even says it on there. Davis Vineyard. Davis Vineyard, yes, it's on there, but only of the dry. So the Davis Vineyard is a vineyard planted in the 1970s, and I was told at that tasting that Forge buys some of that fruit to make their peach orchard. So I found that out. I confirmed it at Forge, so we got 2 of those. So 4 from Forge, all Rieslings, 3 different single vineyards. So 3 more 2020s, so no age there. So that put us at 9, and I forgot to count already. I'll count them at the end. After Forge was off to Silver Thread for another tasting in their library room, and tasted some amazing Riesling. One of the best Rieslings or white wines I'd had on the trip was at 2011. I begged to get another, but that was their first vintage of the current couple that is the winemakers and owners, but we did not get that one. But we did try some others, and I don't exactly remember the vintages we tried, but we did try the 15, and it came out of a giant magnum. So we ended up buying this 2015 Riesling, and it's gonna, I don't know where I'm gonna store it, but it's gonna need some time to age. It's certainly on the development side. They did sell me a 14 estate Riesling, and they went even as far back as this is the Gridley Bluff Point Vineyard. So they do have a few single vineyard. I think only this. So they have their estate, this Gridley Bluff, and this is a 2012. So I did get one with a bit of age, thankfully, from Silver Thread. And then this one actually is from the Doyle Fournier Vineyard, and this is actually super young, 2022. And I said, let's go for it. I think these were planted in the 70s as well. Yeah, 1973 by Charles Fournier, which is why his name is on it. So 4 from Silver Thread. That concluded day 2. Day 3 started with a winery that we had gone to a year ago, and that was the first tasting we did, library tasting, and this is the winery we bought the second most bottles of wine from. Last time I think we purchased a red or 2. This time we just went really white and rosé. So they had an aged rosé, which was terrific. 2016. Rosés aren't always typically meant to age. This tasted great and was aging beautifully. Now, the rest all have some age, which was the point of going to Sheldrake. They have a really vast amount of library wines with some age. Got the oldest Chardonnay I could find that they still had. The 01 Chardonnay is what made me fall in love with Sheldrake a year ago. This is a 2013, far, far younger. We tried a 16 Chardonnay while we were there, or 17, and it was good. I'm hoping this one's even better, being a 13, but before we went out to the Finger Lakes, we tried an 08, and it tasted super fresh, barely developed, almost just a little bit of developing, just really held well in the bottle, but I am hoping for more of a developing flavor. They had a Pinot Gris. We did not taste this, but I saw it. It was very inexpensive, so a 2013 Pinot Gris, and said, hey, what the heck, it's the only Pinot Gris I even really think I saw in the Finger Lakes. So, keep giving that a shot. 13, decade-old Pinot Gris. And then the rest are older Riesling. So here's the 13. And we tried the 14 through 17, I think. This is the 13. So a little older than what we had tried. So none of these were actually tasted. This is the 2011. Now, I think this is what they call, there's a touch of residual sugar in here, but I think barely. 11%, 2011. I'm hoping great things from this much age on this Riesling. Same for this one. This is their 2011 dry Riesling, but again, very old. And then the oldest bottle that I could find that they had was an 09. So I couldn't leave without buying their 09 Riesling. I lied. They had a 2000 Cab Franc. Very nervous about a 23-year-old Cab Franc from the Finger Lakes, but super excited about a 2009 Riesling. So the oldest wine brought back right there. So that was Sheldrake in the morning, followed by a winery that's only been there for a little bit. They are definitely doing some newer, funky, modern, but trendy, but really ancient style stuff. Pet Knot being one of them. Pet Knot's an ancient style, but been kind of on a revival right now. This was their Cab Sauv Pet Knot. They had two others, a Gruner and another one. I forget the other one, the other grape. But this one is probably just had like a strawberry rosé sparkler kind of thing with a touch of funk. It's the best way I could put it. Pet Knots have like a certain funk to them typically. A little bit of like a breadiness to it. You know, Brettanomyces. Solid. Has to be drunk sooner than later. This Pinot Noir Rosé was one of the other rosés we bought. So this is only it's a 21. Very light, fresh. I think this just needs to, it tasted good. This would be great. Very light, lower alcohol. It was like 10%. So great for the summer. This summer specifically. I don't think this should let this go too much longer. Should be drank soon. Next few months. So it doesn't lose any of that nice rosé character. And this I thought was their most interesting wine that they had. They had some others, a lot of things that they age in clay, amphora, sandstones, things like of that. Other types of vessels, cement, things that are becoming pretty trendy now, but have been used for hundreds of years, if not longer, thousands of years, not hundreds. So this was a Riesling skin fermented. It had a little bit of funkiness. It absolutely smells like an ice wine, but it's bone dry. And it had this like mid-palate funk, sweetness, and then it kind of becomes sour. I kind of call it like a reverse kumquat. A kumquat, when you eat it, is sour, 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 then it's a little sweet in the middle. This, when you drank it in the mid-palate's like a little bit sweet. You think it's sweet. It's not really sweet, just giving you that impression, and then it goes sour. So sort of reverse kumquat is kind of how I thought of this, and with a little bit of Brett as well in this. So cool stuff that they're doing, cool wines. No one that I saw in the Finger Lakes is doing anything like it, so definitely wanted to visit it just to get that experience, that feel for it. Last, Hosmer. Only bought 2 wines from them. This Sauvignon Blanc, not a lot of folks doing Sauvignon Blanc. Hosmer does it pretty well. Fresh, more French style, I'd say. Sancerre, Polyfumé than New Zealand style Marlborough, Martinborough, where it's less grapefruity and grassy. This is kind of a little bit more in the middle. So, flintier and citrusy, but solid Sauvignon Blanc. And they had one aged Riesling, and this was their 2017. Has a touch of RS, but again, with the age, you could barely tell that sweetness starts to taper off big time, and it just really leaves some of those developing characters of Riesling, which is petrol, and it gains color and body and these other notes of, you know, banana peel and mandarin and orange peel, things of that nature that sort of develop over time, these tertiary flavors of a developed white that I absolutely crave. So this didn't have it, but it's on its way to it. I don't know how long I'll be able to sit on some of these wines. I think I got the 2020s really to drink now. I don't think those were really purchased to not drink now. Maybe one of the Peach Orchards let it sit, but how long am I going to sit? That thing's a baby. It would need to wait 12 years. So that's 24 minutes in. Let's do a final count of the wines. It was a really great trip. The wines were mostly amazing. The experiences were mostly amazing and better than some of the experiences last year. Different, but awesome stuff. But it's great to see what the region is doing. Some serious producers. You're seeing a lot from these places. You saw very little of just like a maple syrup, blueberry. None of that stuff was at any one of these wineries. Those wineries absolutely exist in the Finger Lakes if you are looking for them. There's nothing wrong with liking sweet wine. You absolutely can go for it, find it, it's there. I specifically was looking for dry. Hey, some of the aged ice wine at Sheldrake was amazing. It's also $150. It's a 2002, I think. But it was phenomenal. The best ice wine, one of the best dessert wines I've ever had in my life. They even had a 2014 Wild Yeast Riesling at Sheldrake, and it was amazing, but I think it was $200. Just not something I would buy, but they were delicious. So there is a place in my heart for sweet wine when it's done right, with that acidity to balance out that cloying sweetness that can happen when you late harvest pick Riesling and let it sit on that vine longer, or ice wine when it freezes in there, that concentrated sugar. Anyway, let's count it and be done. 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the total is 37. I think last year was 26, so 11 bottles over that. And we did buy the Le Clos, Chateau Saint Cosme, Gigondas, Le Clos. There was 2 other single vineyards of Chateau Saint Cosme there from Gigondas. They had some other of the Chateau Saint Cosme wines as well, but we wanted to go for one of their big boy single vineyard Gigondas, and I chose the Le Clos of the 3. I forget the other 2 names now. But 37 wines, be awesome to try them. Hopefully I do some videos on some of them, but super long video. But I didn't want to forget the experience. I didn't want to forget the wines. And I'll look back on this to remind myself what was bought, where we went, and relive the experience to some degree as we enjoy some of these wines. Have a good night.